It was exactly 8:47 a.m. when the office fire alarm went off, not because of a fire, but because someone in conference room C dropped a stainless steel thermos onto a motion sensor. I know that because I was sitting in the supply closet, watching it happen through a crack in the door. I wasn't supposed to be there. Technically, I was supposed to be on sick leave. But I'd used that excuse so many times just to stay home and cry into my hoodie that no one even questioned it anymore. I'd become background noise. Just another empty chair in the break room no one noticed missing. Except that day. I wanted to be seen. Well, not by her. Not yet. Let me explain something first. There's a folder. A plain, black folder with rounded corners and a little rip at the edge. Nothing special. Unless you know what's inside. Inside is the reason I couldn't sleep for 3 nights straight. Inside is the reason I whispered an apology to my cat before leaving the house that morning. Inside is the letter I wrote on my 5th attempt, not because I couldn't find the right words, but because I kept crying on the paper and smudging the ink. And inside, pressed flat between quarterly reports and productivity charts, is my wedding ring. She didn't know I knew. About him. About the text messages she sent while pretending to run late on reports. About the gas station outside of Oak Ridge where they met every other Friday. About the smirk she made when she lied to my face, like she thought I was too slow to catch on. She didn't know I followed her one night. That I parked 2 rows back and watched them kiss through his windshield. I didn't cry then. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles ached for 2 days. But I didn't confront her. That would have made it real. And I wasn't ready for real. So I waited. I waited for the day she bragged about, the one where she'd be presenting to the regional heads, the one where she said she had to look flawless and absolutely nail it. I waited until she went to bed early the night before and left her materials on the kitchen table, perfectly stacked, perfectly rehearsed. And I slid the envelope in between the performance metrics and her salary proposal. Quietly. Like slipping a goodbye into a symphony. Then I followed her to the meeting the next morning. Didn't say a word. Didn't drive. Just took the bus and ducked into the building 10 minutes after she did. Hid in the only room they never check, the dusty, cramped supply closet next to conference room C. And at exactly 9:03 a.m., she opened that folder in front of 12 other people. I couldn't see her face, but I heard the paper stop mid-slide. I heard the shuffle. I heard the silence. And then I heard her say, "Excuse me," like she'd been punched in the stomach. She walked out with the folder clutched to her chest, face pale, mouth twitching. She walked straight toward the closet. And I swear to you, if she opened that door, I might have collapsed on the spot. But she didn't. She just stood there, frozen, breathing hard. Then she called him. I was in that cramped supply closet, knees jammed against reams of printer paper, heart thudding like a drumline, when I heard her voice. Not the cool, controlled, "I'm crushing this presentation" voice she practiced the night before. No, this was different. It cracked. She whispered something I couldn't make out, then pulled out her phone. I could tell by her breathing, sharp and irregular, like she'd been hit with a wave of panic, that she'd found it. The envelope. My ring. The letter I'd folded 3 times, unfolded, cried on, then folded again. I held my breath. She pressed her phone to her ear. The silence between her and the other line was so thick I could almost hear it weighing down the hallway. And then she said it, words I never expected. Clarence knows. She didn't scream it. She didn't panic out loud. She just said it. Flat. Cold. Like someone reading a death sentence aloud. Then came the name. "Tell Mitch not to come here. I don't care what he thinks this is. I can't fix it if he shows up right now. Do you understand? Tell him to stay away." I leaned back slowly against the closet wall and almost knocked over a box of expired toner. Mitch. So he had a name. Mitch. That name hit harder than I thought it would. Like he was more real now. Not just a shape behind a windshield or a blur in a suit. Mitch. I bet he wore polished loafers. Probably had a perfect credit score. Probably knew how to actually style his hair without ending up looking like a damp Q-tip like I do on humid days. She stood there for a few seconds longer, not saying anything. Then she sighed loud and tired and hung up. Her heels echoed down the hall as she walked away from the meeting she once called career-defining. A door opened somewhere in the distance, then slammed hard. I didn't move. I just sat there in the dark, feeling like a ghost watching his own life through a keyhole. And I hated myself, because a part of me, a truly pathetic part, still wanted her to come back and say it was all a misunderstanding. That she found the ring and realized she missed me. That she read the letter and wanted to fight for us. But I knew better. I knew the sound of a woman covering her tracks. I knew the silence between two liars. I knew the tone she used when she didn't plan on telling the whole truth, only the part that protected her reputation. After 20 more minutes of pretending to breathe quietly, I slipped out of the closet and down the back stairwell, unnoticed. No one saw me leave the building. I walked 2 blocks before finally pulling out my phone to check the messages. I had 6 missed calls from her. 2 voicemails. 1 unread text. We need to talk. Please. I didn't expect this today. Didn't expect what? That I had a limit? That I wouldn't sit by while she played house with me and footsie with Mitch under conference tables? I didn't reply. I just kept walking. I didn't even know where I was going. I ended up at the abandoned gas station near the train tracks we used to stop at on road trips. I sat on the curb outside, still in my wrinkled hoodie and unwashed jeans, and tried to imagine what her face looked like when she opened that folder in front of everyone. Did her hand shake? Did her voice crack? Did anyone else see the ring? And then another message came in. This one from an unknown number. You think this was smart? I'm not the one who's going to lose everything. It didn't say a name, but I knew. Mitch had just entered the chat. I sat outside that gas station for what felt like an hour, reading Mitch's message over and over again like it was some kind of puzzle I was supposed to solve. You think this was smart? I'm not the one who's going to lose everything. There was no question mark. No name. Just that one bitter line. Arrogant. Like I'd stepped into something much bigger than I realized. And maybe I had. The irony is, I wasn't even trying to ruin anything. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to humiliate her. I just wanted out, with a little bit of dignity still intact. I didn't even think she'd open that folder in front of other people. But maybe that was just me, always underestimating how fast things can fall apart when the truth finally gets oxygen. I didn't answer Mitch. Not yet. Instead, I opened her voicemails. Her voice was shaky in the first one. She said, Clarence, please. I don't know how you found out, but this wasn't supposed to come out like this. I need you to come home so we can talk. Please. This isn't what you think. The second voicemail was worse. Shorter, sharper, more calculated. If you're trying to make a scene or ruin my job, just remember this affects you too. Don't do anything stupid. Yeah, me doing something stupid. That was rich, coming from the woman who's been lying for God knows how long. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I didn't even want to see my house. Our house. The stupid little hand-painted home is where the Wi-Fi connects automatically sign by the front door would have made me throw something. Instead, I walked until my legs hurt, then got on a bus going the opposite direction from our neighborhood and ended up at a diner I used to go to in college. Same cracked leather booths. Same slightly sticky menus. I ordered a grilled cheese I didn't eat and sat there nursing a coffee until the waitress politely stopped refilling it. At some point, somewhere between my 5th sip and the 100th time I replayed her voicemail in my head, I realized I didn't feel sad anymore. Not in the way I expected. I felt numb, like my emotions had packed up and left before I did. But underneath that, somewhere buried deep, there was a sharp little edge of something else. Not anger, not hate, something quieter, more dangerous. Curiosity. What exactly had I stumbled into? Because Mitch's message didn't sound like it came from some random affair partner. He wasn't scared. He wasn't ashamed. He sounded entitled, like someone who thought he had leverage, like someone who knew something I didn't. So I started digging. I wasn't great with tech, but I remembered her old passwords. The ones she used before she got smart enough to switch to random gibberish. I had one shot, and somehow I got in. Her cloud storage wasn't locked tight like I thought. And sitting right there, bold as ever, was a folder labeled Conf Prospects. I opened it, expecting boring spreadsheets, maybe some client notes. Instead, I found a series of PDFs and scanned signatures. Contracts. And her name was on nearly every page, alongside Mitch's. It didn't take long to figure out what they were doing. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't 2 people sneaking around behind their spouses' backs for thrills. No, this was business. Private deals. Illegal ones, from what I could tell. Not just hiding love, but hiding money. Tens of thousands. And one contract with my name on it, used as a silent guarantor. My credit. My signature forged. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a betrayal. This was a setup. And I started to wonder, was I ever anything to her but a shield? I downloaded everything. Transferred the files onto a drive. And right then, in that diner booth with the cracked red cushion, I realized something I never thought I'd feel. I had power. Not a lot, But enough. And I had to decide what to do with it fast. Because if Mitch was willing to threaten me after one letter, well, what would he do now that I'd uncovered their whole hidden life? The waitress came back to clear my plate. She looked at me like I was the saddest thing she'd seen all day. She wasn't wrong. But she didn't know. This story was just getting started. I don't remember getting off the bus. I don't remember walking back to the house, either. All I remember is the way the sun had already dropped behind the trees, and how the porch light was off, something Lynette never forgot to turn on when she got home after dark. She used to say she hated pulling into a quiet driveway, hated the idea of opening the front door into complete darkness. But the house looked dead now, like it had given up waiting for anyone to come home. The moment I stepped through the front gate, I felt that shift in the air. That eerie stillness you can't quite explain. My key slid into the door like always, but it didn't feel right turning it. I pushed it open slowly and was greeted by silence. No TV. No music. Just the faint ticking of the wall clock and the scent of something faintly bitter. Maybe her perfume. Maybe something worse. The kitchen light was on, and there was a half-empty glass of red wine on the counter. Lynette was nowhere to be found. Her car wasn't in the driveway, but her purse was on the table. Open. Contents spilled out like she'd dropped it in a hurry. That alone was odd. She was obsessive about her things. The type of woman who got furious if I even glanced at her planner, let alone touched it. But tonight, it looked like a crime scene. I crept upstairs, half expecting to find her curled up in bed crying, or maybe on a video call whispering apologies to Mitch. But every room was empty. Unmade bed. Her robe still hanging on the closet door. A bottle of wine, different from the one downstairs, sitting uncorked on her vanity. She'd clearly been here recently. But where was she now? I was about to call the police when I noticed something that made my skin go cold. Our bedroom window was open. Just slightly, but wide enough for someone to slip through, if they wanted to. I backed out of the room slowly and went downstairs again. That's when I saw it. There was a sheet of paper folded in half, placed neatly in the center of the dining table. No envelope. No name. Just one sentence written across the middle in rushed, messy ink. Don't make this worse, Clarence. No signature. No explanation. Just that. I stood there, staring at it, my hands shaking. This wasn't Lynette's handwriting. I knew hers, elegant, controlled. This was rougher, angrier, more aggressive. It didn't take a genius to figure out who wrote it. Mitch was trying to get inside my head. And I had a sickening feeling this wasn't just about emotional manipulation anymore. I checked the front door again. It was still locked from the outside, which meant someone had entered through the window and left through it too. I ran to the back of the house and spotted faint impressions in the flower bed beneath the window. Fresh. Clumsy. Someone had been watching us long enough to know where the alarm sensors didn't reach. Which meant this wasn't random. This was planned. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay in the house anymore. I packed a bag in under 10 minutes. Just the essentials. I grabbed the flash drive with the contract files and shoved it into my jacket. I didn't even take my toothbrush. I left the lights on. I left the front door unlocked. I wanted whoever was watching to know I was gone. I booked a room at a cheap motel off the interstate, one of those places where no one asks questions and every door has paint chipped from old fights. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the glow of my phone screen. Still no new messages from Lynette. But the last one she sent before her phone went dark echoed in my mind. Please. I didn't expect this today. She was right. Neither of us did. And now we were both spiraling. Her trying to control the fallout, and me trying to figure out how deep the hole really went. Around midnight, there was a knock on the motel door. I froze. Not a loud knock. Just two soft taps. Like whoever was outside didn't want to wake the neighbors, just me. I didn't answer. I held my breath and stared through the peephole. There was no one there. Just a folded piece of paper resting on the welcome mat. And inside was a photo of me, taken that morning, walking out of the office building. Someone had been watching me too. I stared at that photo for a long time, longer than I'd care to admit. It was printed on glossy paper, like something you'd get from a cheap one-hour photo booth. A bit smudged at the corner from whoever had handled it, but clear enough to see every detail. Me, stepping out of the office building, right after I slipped out of that supply closet like some coward who just dropped a bomb and ran. My head was down. My hoodie pulled tight around my face. My hands jammed in my pockets like I was trying to disappear. Who took it? Who printed it? Who had been close enough to capture that exact moment and then drive all the way out to this motel to deliver it in the dead of night? There was something even worse than being cheated on, I realized. it was being studied, tracked, reduced to a file someone else thought they could control. My whole life was unraveling, and apparently, it had become someone's side project. I sat down on the edge of the motel bed, that scratchy blanket digging into the backs of my knees, and turned the photo over. Nothing. But it felt too thick, like there was something behind it. I peeled the edges gently and found a second photo hidden underneath. Not glued, just tucked in like a secret. And this one made my stomach flip. It was a picture of Lynette and me at our anniversary dinner last year, sitting on the patio of that overpriced Italian place she'd insisted on trying. We were mid-toast. She was laughing. I was smiling like a man who didn't know he was being used. Someone had taken that photo from a distance. It wasn't one of those restaurant candids. They didn't even offer those. This was taken by someone hiding in the shadows, watching. There was writing on the back of this one. A single line in that same sharp, aggressive handwriting as the note left at the house. She played her part. Now it's your turn. I didn't know what it meant. Not really. But it sounded less like a warning and more like a command. Like I was being pulled into something scripted long before I even had a clue. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with my back to the motel wall, lights on, phone in one hand, drive in the other. I replayed every interaction with Lynette over the past 6 months. All the excuses. All the late nights. The fake smiles. The little silences that passed between us like ghosts. Had this been going on that long? Had she known all along that one day she'd have to pull the plug and walk away? And more importantly, had I just interrupted their plan? I had no one to call. No one I trusted with something this tangled. I couldn't tell my family. They already thought I was too soft, too forgiving, too delicate. I didn't even have a lawyer. I'd never needed one. But now, I was starting to think I might not just be losing a marriage. I could be walking into something criminal. The next morning, I went to a coworker. The only one who'd ever been halfway decent to me. Greg. He's quiet, keeps to himself, but he knows things, tech things, legal things, that kind of guy. I didn't tell him the whole story. Just enough to make it clear that I had documents I shouldn't have. That someone had forged my name on a set of financial agreements and tied me to transactions I never approved. His face turned pale halfway through scanning the files on my flash drive. These aren't just shady, he said quietly. They're fraudulent. And if your name is on this, even as a co-signer or silent partner, you're liable. Clarence, you could go to prison for this if it's traced to you. I laughed. A bitter, joyless sound. I didn't sign a damn thing. I know, he said. But proving that's going to take time. And money. And you need to stay under the radar until then. Too late for that, I said, and showed him the photos. Greg looked genuinely disturbed. Not just worried. Scared. That scared me more than the photos. He helped me encrypt the drive, make duplicates, and showed me how to upload it to a secure backup. If anything happens, he said, you send this to the press. Not the police. The police will take weeks. Reporters won't. It was surreal. Just days ago, I was making grocery lists and wondering if I should start watching the detective show Lynette liked. Now I was sitting in a copy room discussing whistleblower tactics and digital trails like I was in some conspiracy thriller. I didn't hear from Lynette again that day. No calls. No texts. No emails. Just radio silence, like she'd vanished. Like they were buying time. Planning the next move. But that night, when I returned to the motel, there was a voicemail waiting on the landline at the front desk. Not my phone. The motel phone. It played automatically as I entered the room. Lynette's voice. Just 5 words. You shouldn't have opened it. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about betrayal. This was a trap. One I was never meant to survive. I stood in the middle of that stale motel room, staring at the landline like it was about to come alive and strangle me. You shouldn't have opened it. 5 words. No background noise. No emotion. Just her voice, quiet, deliberate, cold. Not the voice of a woman heartbroken or even remorseful. No. It was the voice of someone who had just watched a carefully constructed plan fall apart and was calculating how to clean up the mess. And I was the mess. For a long time, I didn't move. Didn't sit down. Didn't blink much, either. My thoughts were going in every direction. How did she get the motel's landline? Who gave it to her? Were they watching me again? Had someone followed me here? I turned off all the lights, then cracked the curtain just enough to see the parking lot. Nothing. Just a few rusty cars and a flickering street lamp that buzzed like it was trying to tell me to leave. And then a new fear crept in. Not that they were coming for me, but that they weren't. That whatever this was, whatever web I'd stepped into, had already begun spinning around someone else. someone I hadn't protected. That's when I remembered something I should have thought of way sooner. My name wasn't the only one Lynette had forged. She'd used my credit, sure. But for some of those forms, she needed a witness signature, a secondary contact, emergency backup. And I'd been too stunned to notice before, but when I pulled up the files Greg had helped me encrypt and zoomed in, I saw it. My younger brother's name. David. Not just once. 3 separate forms. David, who barely makes rent working night shifts as a paramedic. David, who trusted Lynette because she always remembered his birthday and once baked him a freaking gluten-free cheesecake. I thought she was being kind. Turns out, she was grooming her fall guy. I called him. Clarence? What's up, man? You okay? You sound like you've seen a ghost. Have you talked to Lynette recently? I asked. He hesitated. No? I mean, not since Christmas. Why? Did she ever ask you to sign anything? Anything about business or property or... He cut me off. No, nothing like that. Wait, are you serious? Did she put my name on something? I didn't answer. Not directly. I just told him to lock everything down, his accounts, his phone, his apartment door. I told him not to respond to any strange calls, not to meet anyone in person, especially not if they said they were from corporate. He didn't understand half of it, but he trusted me enough not to argue. And then I realized, if she looped David in without him knowing, how many other names had she used? How many other people in my life were now tangled in this mess? That's when the real unraveling began. I went back through everything. Every document. Every file. Every email. I even checked our old shared tax folders, and buried beneath years of scanned W-2s and monthly budgets was a name I hadn't seen in years, Nolan Kramer. He used to be my college roommate. We hadn't spoken since he moved to Colorado and went off-grid, the kind of guy who brewed his own beer and believed cash should be buried, not banked. Somehow, Lynette had used his information too. One of the fake business invoices listed him as a consulting partner. It was all fake, of course, but on paper, it looked real. And now I had 3 names, mine, David's, and Nolan's, all tied to her, all tied to Mitch, all potentially liable if this whole operation blew up. At some point, my panic turned into something else. Not strength, not clarity, but resolve. I was done hiding, done sleeping in motels and whispering into burner phones like I was auditioning for a bad spy film. I wasn't built for that life. I'm just a guy who pays his bills on time, uses coupons, and writes thank you notes that no one reads. But I couldn't let them drag more people down with me, especially not people who didn't even know they were drowning yet. So I made a decision. I went back to the house, not because I thought it was safe, but because I knew that if anything still tied me to this mess, it was probably still sitting somewhere between our walls. Lynette wasn't the type to shred. She hoarded paper, memories, grudges. I knew her better than she thought I did. The house was cold. Everything exactly how I left it. Except one thing. The wine glass on the counter was gone, and taped to the refrigerator, with a single strip of masking tape, was another note. You're not in control. Stop pretending you are. No handwriting this time. Printed. Mechanical. Like a receipt. Whoever left it knew I'd be back. They were taunting me now, daring me to keep going. And I would, because hidden behind the refrigerator magnet shaped like a cat, there was still a key Lynette didn't know I'd kept. A key to the old storage unit we'd used when we moved into this house. The one we said we'd close out, but never actually did. She thought it was just full of furniture and books. But I'd started putting copies of everything there. Bank statements, letters, photos, evidence. And maybe, just maybe, that storage unit held the one thing left that could turn this entire game around. I don't know what I expected when I slid the storage unit door open that night. Maybe dust, mildew, the usual forgotten boxes of holiday decorations, and broken furniture from our first apartment. What I didn't expect was to smell fresh air, like someone had been there recently. That metallic scent of cool, undisturbed space was gone, replaced by something sharper. Chemical, almost. Like cleaning supplies and old cologne. There were stacks of bins lining the back wall, labeled in my handwriting from 3 years ago. Photos, old work docs, kitchen extras, and one that just said miscellaneous. And then there was the black metal filing cabinet. That hadn't been mine. I froze when I saw it. It was wedged in the corner like it had always belonged there, like it had been waiting for me. One of the drawers was slightly ajar, just enough to say you're not done yet. It wasn't locked. Inside were folders. Dozens. All meticulously labeled. Some with dates, some with names, some with combinations of both. There was one labeled Clarence/March 2021, another labeled DK Alt Rework. I pulled them out one by one, not even knowing what I was looking for, until I found the one marked Redline Copy. I opened it and instantly recognized her handwriting. Lynette's. Pages and pages of notes, some personal, some clinical, all chilling. Observations, timestamps, behavior tracking. Not just of me, but of others too. A whole section was dedicated to David, my brother. Another section for Nolan. And even one for my old supervisor at the firm I left 2 years ago. She had been monitoring people. For how long, I didn't know. But it was deliberate, precise, cold. Some of the pages looked like journal entries. One, dated over a year ago, said, Clarence is still compliant. Doubts surface, but are manageable. Reinforcement through guilt and routine is effective. Contingency protocol, emotional fatigue. I stared at that sentence for nearly 10 minutes. Compliance. Like I was a lab subject. A project. That's when it hit me. This hadn't just been an affair. It hadn't just been greed. It had been a long, slow psychological dismantling. And I'd been her test dummy. In another file, I found hard copies of the contracts from the drive I'd already backed up. Only these had additional annotations. Legal loopholes. Backup plans. Alternate identities. There were notes on how to pivot if I discovered too much. It was like she'd pre-written the fallout before it even began. As if my unraveling was a contingency in her blueprint. And then I found the photograph. Folded, tucked into a small white envelope, sealed with a sticker shaped like a teardrop. It was a picture of me, but not recent. Not from the last few days. This was old. At least 4 years back. I was standing outside a bank, holding a manila folder, the same one she'd taken to her big meeting. The same folder I slipped the ring and letter into. And in the background, barely visible, was her, watching me from a distance. That photo broke something in me. She'd been following me long before I ever had a reason to suspect her. Before I even imagined she was capable of deceit. And the look on her face in that photo, it wasn't curiosity. It wasn't affection. It was calculation. I don't remember falling to the floor. I just remember sitting there, knees to my chest, the folder in my lap, shaking. Not out of fear anymore, but from the weight of clarity. I hadn't been married. Not really. I'd been held. Used. Managed. When I finally pulled myself together enough to stand, I did something I never thought I would. I filmed everything. I used my phone, my backup camera, even a GoPro I found in one of the bins. I narrated. I explained. I laid it all out like evidence in a courtroom. Because I knew that if I didn't make it out of this, if they got to me before I could do anything, someone had to know. Someone had to see what she was. I uploaded the footage to a secure folder Greg had helped me set up. Sent him the link with a message that simply said, release if I disappear. And just as I was about to close the cabinet, I noticed one last envelope tucked underneath. It was addressed to me, written in Lynette's perfect handwriting. Inside was a letter. Short. Just 4 lines. I warned you not to open the folder. Now you've gone too far. This was never about you. But it will be. And attached to it was a flash drive. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because I knew. Whatever was on that drive wasn't just insurance. It was bait. I held the flash drive for nearly an hour. Just sat there in the storage unit, gripping it like it might explode. After everything I'd seen, everything I'd read, this tiny piece of plastic felt heavier than a brick. Lynette's final message had left a clear warning. This was never about you. But it will be. I didn't know what that meant. But I'd learned enough by now to assume it wasn't a bluff. Still, I had to know. Back at the motel, I plugged the drive into the old laptop Greg loaned me. The files were encrypted, but not well. Just enough to scare someone off. I bypassed it with one of the password generators he'd installed and opened the folder. There was only one file. A video. Roughly 7 minutes long. No title. No metadata. Just a black screen and a name. Final/exit. I hit play. At first, it was just her. Lynette. Sitting at our kitchen table. The one we bought together from that flea market during our 2nd year of marriage. She looked calm. Too calm. Her hair was pulled back, her blazer crisp. She didn't look like the woman I'd once fallen in love with. She looked like an executive prepping for a deposition. And then she began speaking. She explained everything. Not with sorrow. Not with remorse. But with clinical precision. She'd been working with Mitch and another group I'd never even heard of, corporate fraud disguised as executive consulting. Their scam? Creating shell partnerships using unknowing participants. People like me, like my brother, even Nolan, to funnel and launder money through project budgets. I was chosen because I was passive, stable, forgettable. Her words. She said they'd started targeting emotionally pliable men. Men who wouldn't question odd paperwork or strange hours. Men who would assume they were the problem if their wives grew distant. They had metrics, profiles, predictive models. She said I fit every one of them. And then she said something that made me sit up straighter than I had in weeks. I thought I could finish the plan and disappear clean. But something shifted. He noticed. He wasn't supposed to. Clarence was supposed to fade. She didn't cry, but her voice cracked. I didn't plan to fall in love with him again, she whispered. That wasn't part of the script. She admitted that the ring, the letter, shook her more than anything else had. Not because it exposed her, but because it reminded her of who she used to be. Before Mitch. Before the schemes. Before she turned her life into one long, calculated performance. And then she said the last thing I expected. I left that flash drive because I owe you the chance to clear your name. Everything on it, documents, signatures, trails, it's enough to destroy the whole thing. I backed it up to 3 secure servers. Greg will know what to do. She looked directly into the camera. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not worth it. But I hope you'll find something better after this. I hope you stop apologizing for breathing. The video ended. And I sat there, stunned. Not relieved. Not broken. Just still. The next few days were a blur. Greg and I handed over the evidence to a firm that specializes in financial crimes. We sent anonymous packages to 3 journalists, complete with timelines, contracts, photos, and Lynette's confession. We didn't need to wait long. Within 2 weeks, headlines started popping up about a quiet corporate scandal. Mitch's name was among the first mentioned. His assets were frozen. His face was on every business feed. By week 3, federal charges had been filed. And Lynette? She was gone. Vanished completely. No trail. No messages. Nothing. I don't know if she ran. Or if she buried herself under a new identity. Or if she just finally disappeared the way she always said she would if things got too noisy. But here's what I do know. I'm free. Completely. No legal ties. No debt. No secrets hanging over me like a loaded ceiling. David is safe. Nolan got cleared. Greg's firm offered him a job in cybersecurity, and he finally took it. As for me, I moved. Not far. Just far enough. I started working for a nonprofit helping people untangle their identities from fraud. Turns out, I'm really good at spotting manipulation now. And the other day, I sat outside a quiet coffee shop, sipping an iced tea, when a woman walked by with a scarf I recognized. The same one Lynette wore on our honeymoon. But it wasn't her. Just a stranger with a scarf. I didn't panic. I smiled. Because for the first time in years, I felt like I had something she never did. Peace. She opened that folder expecting to control the story. But in the end, I got to write the last chapter.